S.P.A. Najib. Here I am also reminded of a comment made by Justice Ujjwal Buyang. He recently spoke in Pune University, and he said that some judges today seem to be more executive-minded than the executive itself. While there are definitely some independent-minded judges all over India, we should be worried that this number is shrinking by the day. Justice Abhay Oak, retired, is another judge who has consistently demanded strict procedural safeguards in wide body of his bench jurisprudence. In landmark PMLA judgments like Larsen Ram, Justice Oak held that once a special court has taken cognizance of a case, investigative agencies like the Enforcement Directorate cannot simply arrest a person unless authorized by the court. But also the Supreme Court's word, the Nagaratna and the Ujjwal Buyang judgment, there is no guarantee that this is the final word. Our personal liberties vigilantly guarded as they ought to be? I am very concerned on this. Next, I want to touch upon another aspect where there appears to be a threat to the rule of law, which is the use of extrajudicial tools like bulldozer politics and encounter killings. The bulldozer today is a symbol of power, wielded without legal sanction and authority. Here the state acts as all-in-one, investigators, prosecutors, judge and executioner, and uses literally bulldozers to flatten the homes of accused individuals without trial. Beyond the demolition itself, the lives of entire families and communities are destroyed. Just imagine. I'm sure that this would not, God forbid, it should not happen to any one of us. A demolition of your house is a destruction of the entire family, entire community. And there are very few cases, I must tell you, that there are lakhs of houses are demolished in this bulldozer justice. Very few people would get the relief. I'll give the numbers. From 2019 to 2023, there was an increase of 379% of forced demolition related evictions. 89% of homes demolished in 2022 and 2023 belong to either Muslims, scheduled tribes, scheduled caste or other backward classes. The Supreme Court did take some action, issuing pan-India guidelines to halt arbitrary demolitions requiring prior notice and accountability. Chief Justice Bhushan Roy gave his judgment and he speaks about it quite often, frequently. But states continue to defy these directions with impunity. So there is a guideline by the Supreme Court which is violated with impunity by many states. Recently, when hearing a batch of contempt petitions alleging that state authorities had flouted directions on arbitrary demolition, the court remitted the pleas back to the respective high courts, directing them to decide the pleas within 4 months without recording any opinion on merits. This is despite counsel arguing that victims were picked and chosen. This begs the question, what is the real value of a guideline judgment if the court that issued it is itself declines to enforce it? High courts we have seen keep matters pending, and in the meanwhile, bulldozer victims have lost their homes and their place of shelter. Who will give them the relief they needed? Another concern is the practice of encounter killings. The Uttar Pradesh government in October 2025 presently issued a statement that since the Chief Minister took charge in 2017, there had been over 15,000 encounters and 256 deaths in the state. This reminds me when I was a judge in the Bombay High Court. I ordered an inquiry in 3 such sample cases, and a principal judge of the Judiciary Court presented a detailed report clarifying or confirming the suspicions that these so-called encounters were true. The matter eventually went to the Supreme Court, which in 2014 laid down 16 principles of encounters in PUCL versus State of Maharashtra. But encounter killings still continue, and encounter specialists are deified today. Sometimes, you are aware of this recent development in Telangana, in Maharashtra, and many other places. What happens is, there is a massive public anger and outrage, with people paying for public lynchings and such like. Some encounters happen in such cases also. Occasionally, there are vigilant judges who inquire further. Notices are issued. Then what happens is that the state governments, in order to escape liability, appoint a judicial commission, usually with a retired judge. And invariably, that commission gives a clean sheet to the enforcement official. Even though facts of the encounter speak for themselves. You can read the facts of an encounter and anyone with a simple common sense would be convinced that this is all fake. But still, they escape the liability and they are given clean sheet. There are some exceptions, I must tell you, that like Justice Sirpurkar Commission, appointed by the Supreme Court, not by the state government, which found fault with 10 police officers in the case in Telangana. I will recall there was a rape and murder of a doctor, and then there was a bluish public uproar. So 4 people were arrested. They said that they were taken to some collection of evidence, something, and they were all shot dead. So there, Justice Sirpurkar has implicated 10 police officers for intentional killings of the accused. Now, Telangana High Court has taken this. The matter is not even taken up till now. So all this collectively begs an important question. I am putting this question before you. If the rule of law is to be replaced by bulldozers, encounter squads and government commissions, what role do courts and judges play? Why do we need judiciary if this is to be replaced by these encounter squads and bulldozers? Now I come to the next aspect, which is again very important, that is free speech. This is aspect of civil liberties considered the condition of free speech today. Historically, the Supreme Court has upheld the idea that the freedom of speech and expression is closely linked to democratic ideals and that free political discussion facilitates public education and enables the proper functioning of the court. It has highlighted the importance of respect for and tolerance of a diversity of viewpoints for sustaining a democratic society. It has also implicitly held that the state cannot prevent open discussion regardless of how hateful such discussion was to the state's policies. Surely, the best way to counter criticism is not to shut it down, but to engage it and respond to the speaker. But this seems to have been forgotten by the powers that be in our country today. Unfortunately, today, all kinds of laws and tools are being used against activists, dissenters, political cartoonists to silence and harass them. If a collective of young persons demands the resignation of a politician demanding accountability, they face criminal FIRs and lathi charges. If media houses are critical of the incumbent government, they are slapped with tax cases and financial scrutiny. Even if years later, after intense harassment, there are finally granted reliefs. There are many news houses which are now cleared. They said that the allegations were completely baseless and they were harassed for years together. Elsewhere, someone mishears a stand-up comedian. This is becoming very common. Someone takes offense and the next thing you know that the comedian is in jail. Even if you are the organizer of the event that hosts such a comedian, you are thrown in jail. It can be weeks, if not months, by the time you actually get out. Citizens are routinely deprived of basic communication whenever the government perceives a threat to itself. And internet shutdowns have become quotidian affairs. Ask residents of Jammu and Kashmir and Manipur. We have the world's highest record. It should be always remain in Guinness Book of Record that we have the highest number of internet shutdowns in this country. Even in Delhi, recently mobile networks were shut down for a while. Recall also the state's attempt to appoint the executive-led fact-check units under the information technology tools, effectively to censor online criticism, although this was later shut down. If you think these are isolated instances, some numbers might make you think again. According to the activist group Free Speech Collective, they have made a survey. In 2025 alone, 40,875 instances of free speech violations were recorded through the year, including 9 killings of 8 journalists and 1 social media influencer. 117 arrests, including 8 journalists and 11,385 instances of censorship, and 208 cases of mass censorship and criminal complaints lodged against multiple persons. Journalists are particular targets, particularly those who report on local corruption, illegal mafia, illegal mining, liquor mafias and administrative failures. Today, counter-terror laws are being used to suppress the media. There are too many such stories, and I'm sure that by the time you continue to read in the newspapers, you will get simply numb to it. People will stop feeling for it when you can see all over that there is a complete suppression of the free speech. Collectively, all of these point to a strategy and a deliberate push towards state monopolized discourse. There is a chilling effect across free speech today, and unfortunately, courts are also reluctant to hear these expeditiously. Logically, the court should act as the protector. Instead, we have instances like the NCERT controversy. You must have all read about this controversy, where there was a chapter in the book about about the issues before the judiciary, and the book mentions that the pendency and corruption in the judiciary are challenges to deal with. As I recall, many former Chief Justices of India have spoken about corruption in the judiciary. Unusually, the court banned the book and sought to blacklist the authors from future academic work with the state. Just blacklisted them, all of them. This order was later recalled. But what is the message? That the judicial power, what the message you are sending to the intellectuals? It would be seen it is becoming positively costly and risky for ordinary citizens, academicians, journalists and commentators to exercise their basic fundamental rights. It is very encouraging to see some judges like just now there was a mention of Justice Andar. I am very glad that he spoke about it. He said that the peaceful protesting, agitating or raising slogans against the government cannot be grounds to file criminal cases against them. But opinions and voices like these from the judiciary need to be louder, much louder, in order to be heard by those who need to hear it first. Then I come finally to the secularism and minority rights. Constitutional commitments to secularism are also being impacted. Here I recall Justice Khanna's words again. He wrote that secularism contains no mysticism. It is clear, practical framework where the state eliminates religion from its affair, treat the devout, the agnostic and the atheist with absolute equality. But what does secularism mean today? Is there a bias towards majoritarian sentiments in the guise of maintaining public order? For example, take the beef ban question. It's also relevant for Goa. Can state policy dictate dietary restrictions? Or are such restrictions a violation of personal liberty under Article 21? When majoritarian cultural preferences are codified into criminal law, what happens to the dietary choices, livelihoods and cultural rights of minorities and marginalized communities? Some glimmer of hope is there, with the Supreme Court recently staying a Madras High Court order that imposed a blanket ban on cow slaughter across Tamil Nadu. But the structural questions still remain to be ironed out. Another facet of this can be seen in the proliferation of state law on anti-conversion. I don't know whether you have seen, any one of you has seen what is anti-conversion law. These are enacted in Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat. They share common features. What are the significant provisions? First, they criminalize interfaith marriages, reversing the burden of proof in cases of conversion, requiring couples to seek advance state permission to change their faith. So if there is an interfaith marriage, you have to apply to the state government, to the collector first, to seek his prior permission to enter into a matrimony. And even allowing third-party relatives to file non-bearable criminal complaints. So if there is an interfaith marriage, then anyone from the family can file criminal complaints against the couple, and there won't be any bail, or couple or those supported the marriage. There is enough evidence on the ground that these laws being abused by vigilante groups. With the popular imagination, love jihad, I have heard so much about it. So if you see the facts and figures, I'm seriously questioning, I mean, what is the really proof of this so-called love jihad? But and this is what we are doing is you are separating the consenting adults. But we have not definitive decision on this. These matters are pending in various high courts and also in the Supreme Court for last, I think, around 5 to 6 years. These matters are not touched at all. Now, another aspect is the fate of the places of worship, Special Provisions Act 1991. This act was enacted after that Ayodhya, the demolition and Babri Masjid demolition. So what this act does is, it freezes the religious character of all places of worship as they stood on October 15, 1947. So all structures, whatever, I mean, it's a Gurudwara, it is a Gurudwara, remain to Gurudwara. If it's a temple, it's going to be temple. It's going to be masjid, it's going to be masjid. So the law is that it would retain that character. The Ayodhya case was an exception, which is provided in the Act itself. Now, the sanctity of this law was upheld, not only upheld, but it was lauded in Ayodhya judgment. With the idea was that we should prohibit courts from entertaining claims based on historical grievances. How long we are going to have these communal disputes? This country has to make some progress, or we are going to be still be fully employed in just communal disputes on temples or masjids or some such religious places. Now this happened in Ayodhya judgment. However, the Supreme Court itself abruptly altered this position soon after by allowing a survey of the Gyanvapi Masjid in Varanasi. I believe that the judge who wrote this Ayodhya judgment, and it's a well-known fact who wrote that judgment, also passed this order on Gyanvapi temple, who wrote that this is a constitutional principle that the places of worship act has to be respected. Now, the court noted that ascertaining the religious character of a place of worship was not barred by the act. So this created a procedural loophole, as now people could ask for excavations, surveys to search for original structures. This has given birth to a spate of criminal litigation. I can give 2 examples, like the Gyanvapi Shahi Jama Masjid in Sambal and the Ajmer Sharif Dargah. All are cases in point. Unfortunately, in Sambal, there was a huge violence and many people lost their lives. Currently, the matter is precariously poised. The Supreme Court has stayed all further survey-related suits and is hearing the challenge to the constitutionality of the Places of Worship Act. Another dimension can be seen in cases involving questions of religious identity. I was really at pain when I read this judgment of the Karnataka division bench and a single judge, because there is a split judgment on this. There was a question. This is called Hazam. It's just worship to be. It's a traditional ritual for Muslim girls. Now the question was, this was banned. This was, according to me, a simple question of right to education and right to dignity. But after discussing issues of discipline and uniformity, the court upheld the state's position. In a secular democracy, a classroom would be where a child learns to live with diversity rather than shed difference. It must be noted that, as I said, that the Supreme Court is split on this issue, and in the meantime, the government changed in Karnataka, and this law is vacated. But similar judgment has gone from the Bombay High Court to the Supreme Court. Considering all the facts, I just will have some concluding remarks. I have mentioned so far citizenship, personal liberty, free speech and secularism. I am concerned as to whether the Supreme Court is not playing its role as a counter-majority check as it was meant to be as zealously as before. The first thing that stands out is what scholars term as judicial evasion. Major constitutional challenges have been brought before the court on all these aspects of civil liberties. The validity of the CAA, the state, various state laws, anti-conversion laws, deletion of voters, bulldozer politics. But these cases end up in languishing the judicial system, either due to the court not taking the matter in time or redirecting petitioners back to lower courts or tribunals for some other reason. By the time the matter actually gets taken up, maybe years afterwards, it is though fate accompanied has been handed to the state. Take for example demonetization. That will take 8 years after the demonetization. Now whatever is the result, it has having the policy, such policy and laws under question, they become so embedded in the system that striking it down might become impossible or even irrelevant. Finally, the judiciary failing to protect pluralism in India today is a question we should ask. Besides cases themselves, the language of individual judges is also changing. Take for example, a judge of the Allahabad High Court who has since resigned, who besides using derogatory and vile language against the Muslim minority in a public function, declared that India must function according to the wishes of the majority and not according to the constitution. Similarly, a sitting judge of the Madras High Court has also reportedly frequently used language reflective of communal biases. Elsewhere, a Karnataka High Court judge referred to a locality in Bengaluru as mini Pakistan. The Chief Justice of the Madras High Court at a national law school recently suggested that law students should return to their roots and study Manusmriti. Even if they are dismissed as casual observations, these remarks are not mere slips of the tongue. There is also a matter of public spectacle, and I want to mention this because there was a lot of debate, and I want to make this point here. Faith is private, but the publicity given to the Ganpati Puja celebrations at the residence of a former Chief Justice of India in the Prime Minister's presence blurs the line between personal belief and constitutional office, as well as the separation of powers between the executive and judiciary. Justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done by a neutral arbiter. Surely the sight of the judiciary using the symbols and language of the majority creates a crisis of confidence. In conclusion, I cannot help but bring up the recent wave of student agitation across the country. This agitation goes far beyond grievances over specific examinations like NEET. They are symbolic of a resurgence of democratic energy. For years, many believed that dissent was waning, civil society was exhausted, political opposition was ineffective, and the space for criticism has been closed permanently. While these young citizens have shown that the democratic spirit in India is still very much thriving, protests were peaceful and principled, with reasonable demands for transparency, accountability, and fairness to the state. In a democracy, they are given. I remember when I was in school, and we were rather surprised. Lal Bahadur Shastri was the railway minister, and there was a train accident, and railway minister and there was loss of lives. So railway minister is nowhere directly concerned with the railway accident happened at that time. Lal Bahadur Shastri, straight way after the news was published in the newspapers, he went to Jawaharlal Nehru and tendered his resignation. So that is a given thing in a democracy. There has to be some accountability at some level. So if the youth demands the accountability, they are not wrong. They have every right to demand accountability in any democracy. I would be amiss not to mention the Supreme Court's recent interim orders on the Jantar Mantar demonstrations, where the court held that the right to peaceful protest is a constitutional guarantee that cannot be made with arbitrary state force. Among other things, the court acknowledged the need for a fair and independent investigation into the allegations of injuries during the protest, even suggesting that a special investigation team might be constituted for this purpose. More significantly, the court directed that no coercive steps be taken against students, provided they have no criminal antecedents, and that personal information and digital data of protesters must not be published for now. So what is happening is now there is the indication that there would be action against those who showed those records who not understood this new generation. Perhaps it's beyond some actors said that she used some grass words to describe the youth of India. But anyway, this is a welcome order and is beside the kind of intellectual leadership we need from our judges. By recognizing that the streets, remember, streets, courtrooms and parliament are all complementary pillars of a living society. The streets are not, you cannot ousted the agitations of the street. To return to what I begin with, Justice Khanna's legacy here becomes important. His career and jurisprudence offer a blueprint for how a legal system rescues its own soul. The health of a constitutional republic rests on whether the legal community possesses the collective spine to stand between the state and the individual. As I touched upon before, this is not the duty of the bench alone. Both the bench and the bar have a role to play. Judges do not need to become heroic activists. They simply need to focus on doing their job independently and fearlessly, maintaining fidelity to the rule of law, principles of natural justice and constitutional morality. Our future depends on the choices we make today. This moment calls upon both the bench and the bar to step outside their comfort zone and reclaim their role as guardians of the Republic to ensure that the promise of Indian democracy remains secure, vibrant and enduring for generations to come. Thank you.